Just going to throw in this idea, obviously you'll pick up on this a little bit, but this thought of like coaching, I believe, is a non-directive exercise, primarily. So I just want to gather your thoughts on this. Let's just throw this around. What are we meaning by non-directive? Just so we're all on the same page with this. What's your thoughts on what non-directive means? So not leading. Anything else?
Not persuaded.
Okay, yeah.
Like not content driven, like set content driven.
So there's no like agenda
there's
before
no
it?
path.
Yeah. There's no pre-planned path,
No, yeah.
right? Yeah. That making sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, isn't it? So the reason for just throwing this out there is I think our culture isn't very good at non-directive. I think our culture is actually incredibly directive. Like incredibly directive. I think very often we're in situations where there's a right answer and I've kind of got to do it this way and I'm kind of meant to do it this way. I don't think we're very, very good at non-directive work at all. In fact, I think it scares us a little bit.
Do you think that comes from the schools, though? School system?
Massively. It comes from the school system. Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So when we talk about questions later on, one of the things that's really fascinating is that I think my school system taught me, my education system taught me to use questions in a way so that I could narrow the answers, so I could get to the right one, and then I could get the mark that I needed.
Yeah.
Whereas actually in coaching, we want you to ask questions that open it up, so there's less certainty around it. There's more options, there's more possibilities, there's more exploring and discovering to be done. Do you think being non-directive is possible? 100% of the time? No. What's your thoughts on this? Is it possible to sit with another person, hold conversation with them, and for you to be completely non-directive with them over a sustained period of time?
No, I'm way too opinionated.
Okay, right.
Do you think sometimes you have to be like offered different directions so they can choose which one they actually want? Because sometimes you just don't know what's in front of you until someone says, "Boop, boop, boop."
I want to say sometimes, but rarely.
Right.
Rarely, but sometimes. I wouldn't rule it out completely, but rarely. 'Cause if I say yes to that, my fear is that you guys are then going to go, all right, just offer options. No. So I would say
Maybe
rarely.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Work it out.
I would say rarely with it.
I think it's really difficult. If you do like that passive listening thing, it's really, really hard to do. You want to respond to somebody. It's a natural thing to make somebody feel comfortable. So to give them a response when they're talking to you, to nod your head or to encourage them, it's actually really difficult not to do any of that completely.
Yeah, well, interesting. My take on non-directive is I don't think it's 100% possible 100% of the time. In fact, I think it's an aspirational goal of someone who's coaching. And I think it's more about an attitude than anything else. Because I think if I was working with Victoria, the only way that I can be completely non-directive is to not be there. Because there's something about my body language, there's something about my expressions, there's something that in some really small way will be directing something. As soon as I ask a question, I have in some way directed Victoria's attention to something, haven't I? So this isn't about, I'm not interested in like, some people get really hung up on the, oh, is that completely non-directive? For me, it's more about your attitude. And the attitude of being non-directive is this idea that my coachee knows best. And actually, I am not going to attempt to guide, lead, coerce, hint at any paths for Victoria that I think she should be taking. Here's what's happened. When we first talk to people about being non-directive as a coach, what a lot of people fall into is like a pseudo non-directiveness. What I mean by that is, Victoria talks as my coachee, and I go, well, I know what she should do. Oh, hang on, but I've got to be non-directive. Right, let me find a way of wording this question so it sounds non-directive, but actually gets her to the outcome that I think she should be at. Loads of people fall into that trap.
And that's the coaching I had. So if I didn't give the right answer, she would ask a very, very similar question, but she'd go, no, but.
Right.
No, but. What if? No, and it would just. Oh God, I don't know what you want to hear.
Yeah. So it looks like it's non-directive, but actually it's very, very directive. It's almost hinting. It's almost like leading. It's almost like somebody going, I've had a great conversation, right? they've come up with an idea that they think is theirs, but actually it was mine. Oh, I hate that, personally. Because either, for me, there's no lukewarmness with this, either be non-directive, like completely non-directive in the sense that I'm going to ask you a question. There's no right or wrong, I'm only asking it because I think it might be helpful for you, but you do what you want with this question and figure it out for yourself. Or, I'm going to tell you what I think. Completely directively. I'm not going to do the fake non-directive thing. I grew up with pseudo non-directiveness and I hate it passionately. So my mum used to go, oh, have you tidied your room? Either mum, say tidy your room, or ask me an open question. Don't do the hint, because basically that means tidy your flipping room, doesn't it? That's what it means. It's this like lukewarm, where we're left guessing, have I got the answer right? Am I doing what that person... It's the worst place to be. So if you can't be non-directive, be directive. Don't do the lukewarm bit in the middle. Because loads of people fall into that trap. And you'll fall into that trap at some point today as well. You'll ask a question and then realise actually it's come from a directive place, not a non-directive place. Non-directive is about effectively saying, I don't know what's best for you. So I'm going to listen and ask you some helpful questions and you're going to figure it out. That's what it's about. It is not about being directive, it's about trying to solve somebody's problem for them. As soon as you're trying to solve somebody's problem, you're in a directive place. That's how you know.
How do you know what questions to ask them? So are your choice of question directed?
So they are to a certain point, of course they are, but the way we ask the questions are not done in a way that goes, there's a specific answer. The way we ask questions is done in a way that goes, let's look at this, or what's your thoughts on, or how does that, or so it actually opens it up for people to just go and explore and figure it out for themselves. It's the way in which the asking questions bit is done. Stephen Covey, do you all know this guy? He wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in the 80s. It's probably the biggest selling self-help book of all time. It's worth a read.
You can get through it.
It's a trek through, but it's worth a read. And if you don't read the whole book, just go Google The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, because it'll just come up in bullet points for you, basically.
That would be my choice.
Yeah. And basically, he, and I don't know if he came up with this, but it was the first place that I came across it, years and years and years ago, was this, that he effectively says, and I know they talk about this in NLP quite a bit, I think they do anyway, where this idea that everybody's walking round with an invisible map of their world held up in front of them. And Covey said, we're all walking around with this. So they act like you're walking around with a map, you're walking around with a map, Dan is, I am, we're all walking around with a map of the world held up in front of us. And this is our map of the world. And on this map, your map of the world is made up through your upbringing, your conditioning, your experiences, your interpretations of stuff. And this is your map of your world. And everything that now happens to you, you filter through your map of the world. That's the way you make sense of what's going on. The difficulty with this, though, is that everybody's map of the world is completely unique. Even if you grew up in the same street, even your siblings have different maps of the world from you. Completely different. So when I say something from my map, and you hear it on your map, it means something completely different. This is where communication breaks down constantly, isn't it? You know the conversation where you go, oh no, I didn't mean it like, oh right, is that what you... We have those kind of conversations because our maps of the world don't make sense. It's like Carolyn's map is written in ancient Greek, Sarah's is written in some African tribal language, mine's in Mandarin, Dan's in Latin. You know, it's like they don't make sense to each other, our maps of the world at all. Directive work comes from your map of the world. Non-directive work is about helping them understand their map of the world and comes from that place. Let me show you how unique your maps of the world are. You ready? I'm going to throw one word at you. I don't even have to tell you to check your map because you will. Just interested in what this word means for you. And you'll see the diversity in the room. Is that okay? Here's the word. Family. So you check your map. And I reckon in this room we'll have some people who've gone to a warm, loving, supportive place. Some people have gone to an utterly dysfunctional, difficult, awkward place. Some of you have literally started to split family off. So you'll have had immediate and then wider. Some of you will have had some friends in there, family of choice stuff. Some of you'll... So when I say family, on your map what you hear is something completely different than what I'm meaning. See how that works? Let me throw a different word at you. You ready? Christmas. So again, some of you have gone Christmas. Woo! Snow, jingle bells. Woo! Christmas. Some of you have gone, oh, Christmas. And everything in between, haven't you? Some of you have got whole, it means whole different, like, so when people go, oh, you're looking forward to Christmas? That's a question off their map, isn't it? Because there's loads of people who are absolutely dreading Christmas. Or not looking forward to it. See how this works? The problem we have is when you work off your map, and this is my problem with mentoring, is that mentoring comes from my map. But what it, like the guy you were talking about, 20 years later, it's a different world that you're living in. Does that make sense? So what you're hearing and what you're working with. Yeah? Everyone alright with this? Get the idea with it? Our maps of the world are completely unique and they're always in play. So here's the idea when you're working as a coach, certainly early on. Can you fold your map of the world up, put it under your chair, and work from the other person's map? And really get to understand what their map of the world says. So when they say family, what do they mean? When they talk about Christmas, what do they mean? When they talk about ultimate performance and potential, well, what's that for you?
Aldi.
Right? What does that mean? Not assuming all the time that you know what it means. Oh, family. Oh, yeah, I'm not about family. No, because you see in your family, not theirs. It might be the same word, but a completely different meaning. When we have gaps on our maps as well, the only place we can go to is the next nearest thing. So this is why when people don't know what coaching is, they go, a bit like counselling, because that's the next nearest thing they know. When you don't know what food tastes like in a restaurant, it's always a bit like chicken, isn't it? It's a bit like chicken. Because it's the next nearest thing. You've got no concept of it. People, I'm not very good about names of colours, so people name colours, and I'm like, what's that then? They're like, shade of green. I'm like, oh, right, okay. Do you know, I can get that. But I've no concept of what they're talking about when they name... Cyan. What the flip's that? What is cyan?
Can you order some toner? Cyan.
Blue.
Is it blue? Right, yeah. So I have massive knowledge gaps when it comes to like, other than the primary colours and really obvious ones. I'm like, I don't know what that is. So you see that, like I have to go to the next nearest place to kind of make sense of it. That happens for people all the time. So when we're coaching, the idea is put your map of the world away and work from the other person's map. That's what being non-directive really is. Not thinking all the time, oh, right, yeah, oh, how's that, I know what that is, or I know what that is, or that work, oh, they need to do this. Is that okay?
That happened recently, it's colleague had lost their mum, and another colleague said, oh, no, how you feel? I know I felt my guinea pig died. And you know when you think, I know what you're trying to say, but actually, that isn't at all the same. But from her mind it was. She thought on her map then, if you put it into that, that's how that one person felt. That's how she felt when her guinea pig died. In her mind, she might have felt that sad when her guinea pig died, and you don't take that away from her, but really, it wasn't really.
Even if it had been her mum though, it would still have been different.
Exactly, because she'd still have felt differently.
It's a different
Because the
experience.
relationship with her mum would have been different.
Yeah.
I think the phrase, I know how you feel, I'm just not convinced about it, because I don't think anybody knows how you feel about anything. I think somebody saying, I'm trying to understand how you feel, or
Actually, I can't understand.
I can't understand how you feel, or
Actually better,
but I know how you feel is a bold statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
For anybody, anything about anything. Because how you're experiencing something, how I'm experiencing something are completely different. Our maps of the world mean that we can look at the same thing and see it completely differently. Can't we? Because it's actually about the interpretation that comes from our map of the world. Okay, and I think if you can picture people walking around with a map of the world, this will just help you understand communication better and actually help you be a much better at coaching and working with people. Because often they're just coming from their map of the world. So it's just trying to understand that all the time. All right, I'm going to give you a chance to do some group coaching with me. Right, I know this might feel early on in the day, but I'm going to give you a chance to do this because all I like to do is the point of the exercise is I'm going to present something that's going on for me in life at the minute and give you guys a chance to ask me some questions about it. Now, this isn't about trying to give me some brilliant coaching or ask amazing questions that impress the rest of the group. It's not about that at all. What it's about is you checking in how much this potentially takes you to your own map. So what I'm talking about, how often are you on your map in your situation, thinking about how this would apply to you and what you might do and trying to solve my problems for me and give me advice and all that kind of stuff. Is that okay? So we're going to do that exercise. I just want to throw this idea in from, have any of you read Nancy Klein's book called Time to Think? Yeah? If you haven't read it, just read the first half. The first half's really good. The second half's more about how it sits into organisation stuff, but the first half's really good. Nancy Klein says some brilliant things about non-directive work. And she says, one of the things she says is this, that we live in such a directive culture that we've grown up with the idea that the best way we can help somebody is to tell them what we would do in that situation. So a friend rings you with a problem, and you assume that the brain that came up with the problem is not the same brain that can solve the problem. So what they need from you is for you to step in and tell them what you would do in that moment. But Nancy Klein makes the point of often what happens is the two phones get put down. The advice giver walks away thinking, whoa, look at me, solving the problems of my friends. The friend on the other end of the phone's going, not quite right. It's not exactly what I needed. Because actually they're the expert on it, aren't they? And if we give people time to think, the answers, solutions, ways forward that they come up with are exactly right for them. Way better than anything we would have ever suggested. That's where she comes from with it. And I totally buy into it with her. That actually people can solve their own stuff if they're given the space and time to work with it. That's real non-directive work. Trusting people to figure it out for themselves. Not jumping in and trying to solve it for them. Some of you in this exercise that we're going to do now might be trying to break the habit of a lifetime. And that's okay. The key with this is just recognising that you're doing it. This is an awareness exercise. So if you're going to try by putting your maps under the chair and stay on my map, but if at any point your map pops up, I'd just like you to acknowledge it in your own head, like, hang on, there it is again. And if at any point I get a question that I think might be coming from your map of the world, I'm just going to throw that back at you. Please don't think it's not like I'm not criticising you, having a go at you. It's just learning for the rest of the group. The question is that potentially coming from your map and giving you a chance just to see whether you think it is or not? Because this can be quite subtle. And we can be very good at trying to appear non-directive when actually we're trying to solve people's problems for them. Okay? Everyone right with that? Right. I'm going to sit a chair in the middle here and then you can work with it. So, here's an ongoing thing in my life, and it is ongoing because we revisit it quite a lot as a family. So I have a wife and 3 kids. 2 of my kids are biologically mine and my wife's, and our youngest kid's adopted. So one of the challenges that we have, so just to give you a little bit of background, his name's 6 years old. He came to us when he was 3. So it's 3.5 years kind of that he's been with us. But one of the ongoing challenges we have all the time is how much do we talk about adoption and how much do we not? So he knows everything in the sense of like age appropriately, he kind of knows everything. There's nothing been hidden from him. He remembers being adopted, so do you know, like that's all there. But it's the sense of it comes from a place for me of like I don't want adoption to somehow just become taboo, like we never mention it. So inadvertently, it almost becomes something that he thinks we don't talk about. But at the same time, I don't want to be talking about adoption every day, so that he's like, "Oh, my life, we shut up about adoption." Do you know? So it's this ongoing challenge for us of balance with this, of how we kind of get this right. So it's something me and my wife revisit quite often. So it'd be helpful for me to have a little bit of coaching just to get my head a little bit clearer on the path forward and how we're working with this and whether we're on the right track with it or not. Is that okay? Brilliant. Anyone's map got involved straight away? Good, thanks for acknowledging it. It's tricky, isn't it? Okay. Right, go on, just ask me any questions you want. I'm not bothered whether your questions are good, bad or indifferent. It's more about the place they're coming from.
My map's out in front of me.
So the discipline is, if it is like that, it's just trying to get it away as much as you can.
So can we ask questions about to get more info, or is it questions to help you? Because like I want to know if you were the boys, you were the kids now.
You can ask me that if you want to ask me that.
So do your other kids know?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, totally involved in the whole process, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's transparent.
Yeah, from start to finish, it was a whole family thing. It wasn't just something me and my wife did, it was a family thing that we did.
Is this about your feelings, or about how when you look back you'll go, I did the best because I did this, and wanting to know that you did the best, or is this about how going to cope with it?
Great question. I've thought about this quite a lot, and I think it's both. So I can't do that it's totally about because it's not. Some of it's actually about me thinking, right, have I done my job for him as a dad?
So
But it's definitely both.
it's part of your worry, the balance for him between acknowledging he's been adopted and the I'm defined because I've been adopted.
Okay, so, right, I'm just going to pause it for a bit of learning because your question's really good. But I reckon a really purely non-directive question would end after about 4 words with that. So what did you start with? Is this part of your worry? I reckon that is a great question. Because all you're doing is then giving me a chance to explore my worry. Does that make some sense? Now the slightly directive part of that is you've put the word worry in and I never said worry. But I'm okay with that. Do you know, as in I can handle that, so that's alright. So I can now explore worry in a completely... Whereas what you've done, Rachel, is given me worry and then given me 2 options. Is it this or is it that? Does that make sense? And actually, in this instance, you're pretty spot on. So it's okay. But in another instance, you might ask me that question, give me 2 options, and then you've directed me to A or B, and they're the only choices I've got now. And that in coaching is something we call polarising of choice. So actually, sometimes the best questions you can ask are way shorter than what you need them to ask. So if you were to say, what is it you're really worried about? Or what's the real worry here? And I kind of go, don't know. Then maybe at some point you might help me out with some option. Is it this? Is it this? Is it? You might do that. But at this stage, I think you can offer me worry and let me be with it. Does that make some sense?
But then you can say, I'm not worried.
Yeah, because then I can go, actually, it isn't worry. It's
Yeah.
something else. Does that make sense? Everyone understand where I'm going with that? So my worry is, I don't want adoption to ever be an excuse. I don't want to wander around life going, oh, I'm like this because I was adopted. But at the same time, I want him to know his story, and I want it to be, it's part of who he is. It's part of his life, and it's an important part. So I want him to find a great balance between those 2 things. That's what I want, and I'm worried that he won't.
What does think about his adoption?
In world, it's just dead normal. Do you know, like he'll be like, did he come out of his mum's tum or did they adopt him? And sometimes you go, oh, they adopted him. Sometimes, most of the time, we go, he's like, all right, can I have a biscuit? Do you know, that's his, it's like, no.
Does he tell his friends?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, but other times it's not a real big deal for it. It's very, very normal in his world. Very normal.
How did the other 2 children manage?
Brilliantly. They adjusted quicker than anybody in the whole process. They were just like, all right. So, like very, very, very quick with it. Really quick, and just been brilliant with it, the whole thing. Again, it's very normal for them.
Can you control what feels?
No.
Can you control what thinks?
No.
What can you control?
Brilliant. What I can control is what I do and how I respond and how I feel, and that's the bit that I want coaching on. So I don't want coaching on what is going to do or not do, because he's not here, I'm here. So I want coaching on what I'm going to do or not do, or respond or think or feel.
Are you overthinking it?
Do you think I am?
It's not what I think, it's what you think.
I suppose I'm wondering I'm wondering if the question comes from a place that you potentially think I'm overthinking it.
Okay, well if we pause, then it's because the way you've spoken about it so far has been quite positive, and
Right.
it seems as though whatever you're doing at the moment is working, because you've said you don't really have a problem with it. So is it because you're overthinking it?
Well, I don't think I'm overthinking it, personally. I think it's an important thing for me to think through and keep working with. And also, so there's a bit of map of the world stuff here. So on your map of the world, this sounds really positive. but we haven't yet checked out whether it is for me. Do you see how that? So that's really subtle, isn't it? Because I bet you won't have been the only one sitting there, Lynn, where other people are probably thinking, well, what's the problem here? It sounds quite positive. But that's your map of the world. So I'd be checking this out with me, like, how does it sit for me? Does that?
Yeah.
So rather than that, are you overthinking it? I think it's more about trying to check my map out around this. You might be able to say, this sounds quite positive for me,
So what's the actual
but I'd
problem?
like to know how it feels for you, like what's going on for you. Does that make sense? So there's nothing wrong sometimes with declaring how it is for you, but what is this like for you? Because I want to check this out.
Can I mention something that I picked up on?
Yeah.
You've used the word normal for how
Yeah.
feels about it and how your other children feel about it.
Yeah.
So I think that would have been the route I would have taken to go to the question you just asked. So it's normal for them. How is it for you?
Ah, great question, Don. That's a really good question. I want to say normal, but then I'm going, what the flip's normal?
You're own normal, don't you?
There's very little distinction. Apart from when I have conversations like this, there's very little distinction between and... No, there's distinction between all three of my kids, but adoption isn't the factor that there's distinction between the three of them. So that's what I want to say. It feels normal. It feels... It is what it is. It feels how it is. It doesn't feel right or wrong or good or bad. It just feels that's how it is. I've got 3 kids. And all of those 3 have different needs. Good question, Dan. See, can you see how that gets my brain ticking? Can you see me doing the work now?
So you're saying that you need some counselling, and for us, we feel
No, I don't need counselling.
not counselling,
Coaching,
sorry,
yeah,
coaching. We all feel that you've come across quite positive. So, do you feel like there's an outcome for the future that might not happen? I'm confused as to what. I'm not a very good coach, am I?
No. I like the fact you said I'm confused.
Yeah, because for us it does seem quite positive. Is anybody else with me on this? What you're saying is, I don't understand what you want coaching on.
What I want coaching on is clarity for me on the way forward. Am I as dad getting this right for him in the best way that I can? That's what I want some clarity on.
How would you know if you got it right?
Great question.
That's like what I was trying to say with my outcome. What?
Yeah. That's a great question, isn't it? How would I know?
Yeah.
So see, this leads me somewhere else, because I like this now, because this makes me go, actually, I think I do know I'm getting it right, because I see it I see the way he responds to stuff, I see the way he behaves, the way he acts, I see the bond. I think I see it every day that we're getting it right.
And that's pretty much child-led from the child himself.
Completely, yeah. Yeah, tells us loads without telling us anything. Tells us loads. Yeah.
So when would you know?
Now, I think I know now.
You know
I think that question helps me know now, actually, that this is okay and we're doing well with this. And actually, interestingly, that do you notice it? I don't know if you notice this, actually. I notice this in myself now. I feel like I've gone, do you notice that?
Yeah.
So in some ways, that question gives me, see how simple that question is? How will I know? Just gives me some clarity, actually, on the fact that I do know. Like, I do know this. So maybe then, this would, at this point, we're going to pause this, but at this point, this would take us somewhere else in a coaching conversation. It might take us to the point, right, how am I going to continue to know this? Do I need to do anything differently? Do I not? Do I need to improve this in any way? Do you know? So it would lead us to that place.
It'd be like how often you need to revisit these questions and things like that. Or...
Might be. Or do I not need to revisit this?
Yeah.
Or where, do you know, so this might be something that I put to bed and it's not a thing for me. It might be something there's a little bit more thinking through or work to do with it. Okay. Is that making some sense? Right, the point of that exercise was not to give me brilliant coaching, although I did get some. The point was to just check in with your map of the world. Now, I deliberately pick a topic for this that I think potentially divides the room, in the sense that some of you will be sitting there with real lived experience of adoption. Some of you will definitely be sitting here with real lived experience of parenting. Some of you will have no experience of adoption whatsoever. It will be nothing that's really ever appeared on your radar other than in the media. So I'm interested in how it was for different people in terms of your map of the world, because sometimes when somebody's talking about something here as a coachee that you've really lived through, or reminds you of experiences, or plays into something close to home for you, that's when it can be really, really difficult to stay in a non-directive place. Because your map of the world is literally like that. For other people coaching, when you've got no experience of something, it can be actually easier to coach. Because I've got nothing to offer you. I coach a lady who's a professor at one of the top universities in Britain. She does research into stuff that I don't even understand, if I'm honest. She's so clever, it's unbelievable. I couldn't mentor her if I tried. I've got absolutely naff all to offer her. Like, well, why don't you try this? But really easy to coach her.
That's been a really interesting thing you've said that, because as I do quite a lot with other businesses, and I sometimes feel a bit intimidated by businesses which are bigger businesses and doing more than me. But what you've just done is shown me, because my map is your map.
Yeah.
I've got a birth child and adopted child.
Right.
So straight away I went into my map.
Yeah.
And then when you said about other businesses that you don't understand, I'm intimidated by that.
Yeah.
And I needn't be.
No.
Because it's actually better to not know what they're doing.
Yeah. I think it is. Yeah, often not, because then you really go and listen. As soon as you put your map away, you're able to really listen to the person's map. Excuse me. While your map's here, you ain't
And
really
it was
listening.
loud in my head as
Yeah.
well. It was physically loud in my head. The questions I was going to... Oh, God, let me...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Negative
almost...
thing, you don't want to put it out there in case it makes you feel bad.
I wanted to share my experience with you immediately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's almost like adoption. Oh, I know about this.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. And here's the thing is, you do know about your adoption
Yeah.
with bells on, but you don't know about Jim's. And
That never
ours.
would have been as clear if you hadn't picked a topic that was so close to my heart.
Right. Yeah.
And it happens more often than not when you're coaching, doesn't it? It's very rare. We coach children, and it's far easier to coach like 14, 15-year-old boys I coached for years, double. But 50-year-old female.
I've coached quite a few teachers, and my map is constantly coming up, and I have to go, that's mine, put it away. And they'll say something else, and it'll come up again 5 minutes, no, that's mine, put it away. So it happens a lot.
That
But
was,
as soon
it
as
was
you're...
so cute. It was so
Yeah.
loud in my head what I
Yeah.
wanted to say that I...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Because, and this is the thing with it, and this is where we're working with this idea of putting your map away, because while your map's here, you're in your world, and you're not really listening, and you're not being of much use. When you can put it away, we can actually start to work with the other person's map. And this is really about not passing judgment. Because if someone came to me for coaching because the hamster had died, or whatever it is, gerbil or guinea pig or whatever, right? The problem you've got with this is, judgment comes in when I go, well, in my world, that's not really a big deal. So I want to go, flipping get over yourself, as people flipping starving to death. Do you know, like... But actually, in their world, this is a thing for them. And I'm using that as an example. It could be anything. Because it's all relative, isn't it? The worst experience of your life is only the worst experience because you've never had anything worse happen. And the best day of your life is only the best because you've never had anything better happen. So some people are working in this range, and some people are working in that range. And we can't be passing judgment on whether... Because it's all relative for that person, isn't it? So if this is a big deal for them, it's a big deal.
If you put your map away, it's a lot more black and white than cerise and whatever.
Yeah. So I just want to throw this in, picking back up on Nancy Klein's thoughts for this. So how long have you guys now been thinking about Jim, my family adoption? How many minutes would that be? 10? 15 maybe? Okay. How long have I been thinking about it? Decades, in reality. Decades. So, who's the expert? Right, you see the... And yet, we often assume, we listen to somebody talk and then we go, well, I know what you should do. Even if that somebody's only been thinking about that half an hour, they've been thinking about half an hour longer than you. Generally, people will come and talk to you about stuff they've been thinking about for weeks, months, years. They will. They're the experts, so let's help them use their expertise. It's almost a little bit cocky, big-headed, innit, to think, oh, I'll solve your problems for you. You've told me about this for a minute, I'll tell you what you should do. But after a minute?
And you were dead articulate as well, and were able to sort of set the context. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can come into a situation with a person they don't know, in surroundings they don't know, and just go, but there it is.
Yeah.
4 minutes, nicely packaged up. Let's go.
No, not at all. It takes some time for people, doesn't it? Dan, you had an experience, didn't you, the other day, just telling me about, where your coach, he was saying, that bit's private, I'm not telling you about that bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was beginning of last week. One of the first things a woman came into a session, she said, I don't really trust people, so I'm not going to tell you much. I said, okay. And then we were doing the Wheel of Life, which comes up later. So, and there was an area on that which goes, well, I'm not going to talk about that because that's private. Okay. Within 10 to 15 minutes of the session, everything.
She's talking about it.
Talking about everything. Everything she said she wasn't going to talk to me about, she was talking about.
And that is trust, isn't it? And I don't know how you get people to trust you or whatever, in the sense of, there are bits and bobs that you read, but you have to have that relationship.
Yeah, you do.
It has to be a relationship.
Doesn't work without it.
No.
Doesn't work without it at all. There's no point going anywhere without it. We talk about this in other training days, but for me, connections with people are like bridges, and we do build bridges with each other. So, like, if I've got a bridge with Carolyn that's made out of straw, but I've got a bridge with you that's made out of steel girders, actually, what we can throw across this bridge without it collapsing isn't much. What we can throw across is massive. And this is where somebody you love and trust can say something to you and you can take it. The man on the street or the woman on the street says it to you, you'd be deeply offended. It's not to do with what they've said, it's to do with the strength of the bridge.
Yeah.
And without the strength of the bridge, coaching
doesn't get built, does it?
Doesn't get built in a day, you know. It takes a bit of time.
Yeah.
Now, it can grow pretty quick from I don't trust people to 10 minutes later, hang on.
Yeah.
But I'm sure in Dan's relationship with that client that he's working with, actually the trust is going to get more and more and more and more and more with it. It doesn't work without it. It doesn't work without it.
No.
There's got to be that level of buy-in and trust with people and connection for coaching to work. It's really, really important.
And listening in that, because actually what she was saying to you was, I do want to talk about this. Because if she really didn't want to talk about it, she wouldn't have mentioned it.
Yeah.
So that
was like a big flag,
it
wasn't
was.
it? This bit here.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
But when I told that story to John this morning, it's something I didn't pick up on because it felt natural to me. It was, you were mentioning my reaction to that.
Yeah,
It
brilliant.
was just,
Okay.
that's all right.
It's all right.
It's fun actually, because I've recently been to a session where I've gone in and said, no, I'm not going to talk about it. I haven't done that same thing. So when you said that, I was like, my hat was right there. Yeah, no, I completely understand that. I'm not going to talk about it, but actually, I really want to.
Yeah, completely.
But how would you have felt if the coach had said, well, what's the point then? What's the point of me being
No,
here?
if someone said that to me, I'd be like, well, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having that sort of, okay, do what you want. And
So,
attitude was like really freeing and opening. For
Yeah, if you want to talk about it, you talk about it. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
Do you know?
John, I'm just conscious that some people don't know who I am and I don't know who they are. And they're probably sat here thinking, who's this woman? And she's
Yeah,
really
sorry, I
great.
totally
Sorry,
forgot.
I did as well. So
Yeah.
it's really, really
This is
great.
Jane, my business partner.
I'm Jane. Hi.
So she was in a session this
Sorry.
morning, and then she was going to pop in and. If you're on LinkedIn, you've probably flipping seen her because she's absolutely prolific on LinkedIn. So she's got like 100,000 connections or something. I think. Not that many, but. But yeah, so this is Jane. So that's Sorry, I should have done that introduction. I just want to read something to you called The Story of the Butterfly. It's freely available on the internet. I didn't write it or anything like that. But when I came across it years ago, I really like the way it captures the idea of non-directive work and our desire to be directive, but actually sometimes it not being that helpful. So it says this: a man found a cocoon of a butterfly, and one day a small opening appeared. He sat and watched the butterfly for several hours as it struggled to squeeze its body through the tiny hole. Then it stopped as if it couldn't go any further. So the man decided to help the butterfly. He took a pair of scissors and snipped off the remaining bits of cocoon. The butterfly emerged easily, but it had a swollen body and shriveled wings. The man continued to watch it, expecting that at any minute the wings would enlarge and expand enough to support the body. But neither happened. In fact, the butterfly spent the rest of its life crawling around and was never able to fly. What the man in his kindness and haste did not understand is that the restricting cocoon and the struggle required by the butterfly to get through the opening was a way of forcing the fluid from the body into the wings so it would be ready for flight once that was achieved. I really like that because I think sometimes we jump to helping people, we jump to being directive, we jump to solving people's problems for them because we want them to get